Okay, what's going on guys? My name's Jason Morris. Today I want to ask a little bit about like a questions and sort of answers video. And I'm filming on obviously something a little bit different. Can you guess what it is? Can you guess what it is? Obviously, judging by the thumbnail, you probably actually know what it is. Yes, it's the Osmo Pocket, and that's probably why you can notice the object tracking as well, which is one of the coolest features. I've got a video coming up with the object tracking that you guys need to be watching. But anyway, this video, we're gonna be talking about shutter speed and the importance of that you don't have to always keep twice your frame rate. Let's get into it. All right, as I said, you don't always have to keep the shutter speed twice the frame rate. Now, I was asked a question by Maddie through Instagram. I'll bring up the question. All right, so ideally we shoot in the 24, 25 cinematic style frames per second range for our motion blur and bitterness, etc. I think he meant butteriness, but anyway. Now, my question would be, would this only really apply when shooting a scene with humans / animals, etc. in it, or is it more of a blanket cover? For example, if you are shooting some static landscape or cityscape stuff, does it really matter? Then you can bump it up to more of an appropriate exposure if the shutter speed doesn't want to play ball and you can't quite fine tune enough without filters. That is a fantastic question. Now, because they're not variable ND filters, you cannot get the absolute exact exposure level. Now, with regular cameras, you do have variable ND filters. You can get the exact exposure level. You definitely don't need to stick to twice the frame rate. So if you don't know what it is, please watch some of my other videos explaining this, but I'll quickly dive over it. If you are shooting 24 or 25 frames per second, at most of the times you need to shoot twice your frame rate. So the shutter speed should be at 1/50th of a second, which gives you that 180-degree shutter rule. This gives you the most amount of motion blur that our human eyes naturally see. A little bit too much and a little bit too less, and you get different types of motion blur, especially if you do crank that shutter speed up, you get less motion blur, and you would literally be able to see my hand is tack sharp as opposed to blurry hand. Now, you may actually want this. So there are a few different scenarios you might actually want to crank up that shutter speed, and potentially that's sports or fast-paced action. Because fast-paced action, you tend to get too much motion blur if it goes in front of the camera, and you might actually miss the action, like it'll just look a bit too blurry. Cranking that shutter speed up, like say for motorsports or ball sports, you will actually see more of the action, because essentially what's happening is that you're closing that shutter speed a lot faster, so you're capturing more of the action and less of that blurry motion. You kind of have to understand the photography side. If you drop that shutter speed down, you'll start to get more of a blurrier image. It'll capture the image a lot slower. Crank that shutter speed up, it'll capture the image a lot faster. But like I said, just to go back to that question is, no, you definitely don't need to keep the shutter speed twice the frame rate. If you are shooting humans or animals, you can definitely crank that shutter speed up a little bit more. If you're using ND filters, that's perfectly fine. You can do those minor adjustments by cranking the shutter speed up. Probably the one thing you don't want to actually do is drop the shutter speed below twice the frame rate. You don't probably want that. That would be more of an artistic feel, but it'll introduce obviously a lot too much motion blur, and it will just look crazy blurry, like you've got this really weird, trippy, drunk or drugged out look. You probably don't want that. Cranking the shutter speed up is probably the most common one, just to get that exposure down. Obviously, if you are outside, you do need those ND filters, or crank that shutter speed. Now, when it comes to architecture, sometimes you might actually like the sharp look. Now, if you've ever been to, we have over here like Harvey Norman or JB Hi-Fi. These are like electronic stores. So over in the States, I think you've got like Home Depot and all those kind of stores. Best Buy, is Best Buy an in-store or is that an online thing? I don't know. Anyway, comment below, let me know. Is that an online store or is it in-store thing? Anyway, so if you've ever been to those and there's a whole bunch of TVs along there, they generally shoot that at higher frame rates. So you get that really tack sharp footage. They do that on purpose so the TV looks sharper than it actually is, which is really, really cool. But sometimes you actually might want that motion blur. So it purely depends on you. It purely depends on how you want your footage to look. So if you are shooting family stuff, you can do twice the frame rate, get a little bit of motion blur, or you can crank that shutter speed up to drop, obviously, that exposure level to 0, and you'll have nice tack sharp footage of your family, your pets, or your children, whatever you want to shoot. Like I said, it's purely up to you. You just want to have that in your kit so you understand why you're cranking that shutter speed. So I really hope that helps. Like I said, you don't have to stick to twice the frame rate, that 180-degree shutter rule. You can increase the shutter speed, gives you a tack sharp image. But what it can do sometimes, it looks too sharp and just a little bit too fake. That's probably the one thing you don't want, is your footage just to look a little bit too fake. With object tracking, I'm gonna do this in another video, but yeah, I hope that really helps that question. If you do have any more questions, guys, please comment below. That would be amazing. I would try and get to them as best as possible. So this can apply to the Osmo Pocket, but also to regular cameras as well. Other than that, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button. That would be absolutely amazing. Comment below if you have any questions. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you already haven't. I know there are a lot of people that have just picked up the Osmo Pocket for Black Friday sales or Christmas. I've got a whole bunch of Osmo Pocket videos you can watch and a whole bunch more coming. So other than that, guys, my name's Jason Morris and I'll see you guys in the next video. All right, let's get it.